For a losing week, I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, really appreciate it, Charlie. Carol Massler, Tim Stenovic, we're live at the U.S. Open in Flushing Meadows, New York.
It's really nice.
It's really nice. We were just watching a player, one of the professional players here, and just stopping, signing these big tennis balls for kids. It's really
All
sweet.
these kids, it was really cute. All these kids kind of ran up to him, and he was just had this huge smile on his face, and he was signing these stuff for kids. It's really cool. As I said yesterday, one of the great things about the U.S. Open is the best athletes in the world, the best tennis players in the world, are walking amongst all the fans, and they can kind of interact with them.
Carrying their equipment and stopping for fans, really sweet, especially when it's kids. We're also going to say we're seeing lots of people at work. When you look around the U.S. Open, it takes a lot to put this to work in general, and this is timely considering we've been talking a lot about the monthly jobs report. We want to see what our next guest has to say about that. Amy Glazer is with us.
Yeah, she's Senior Vice President of Business Development North America at Adecco. It's a huge recruiting firm, so she's got a great idea of what's going on in the world of the workforce. She joins us this afternoon on the phone from Jacksonville, Florida. Amy, how are you?
I'm good, Tim. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, it's really great to have you with us. Okay, so was there anything not to love in this jobs report? We just heard it from Reed and Creedy a few minutes ago. But curious about your takeaways. Anything not to love in here?
Yeah, no, Tim, I think we're still seeing a lot of optimism out there. It mirrors what I'm seeing on the ground. There's still almost 2 jobs for every single person, and the race for talent is still highly competitive with the candidates in the driver's seat.
Well, and I guess what's interesting, and especially for a place like you guys, because you help employers find the workers they need, you help individuals find the jobs that they want. And
That's
so
right.
I'm curious, based on the report that we got, was there anything that was different from what you guys are seeing firsthand when you work with individuals and employers? Or, give us an idea, because you are firsthand seeing, and probably a great indication of what's to come, whether or not this strong jobs market continues.
Yeah, I think it reflects the exact demand we're seeing from employers. We're seeing increases in retail and trade, business consulting, manufacturing, healthcare. Those are the hot jobs that employers are looking to us to help with. I think one of the most notable things that we continue to see in these jobs reports is really the pressures there are on wage increases. And for a number of years, I've been saying, we've been defying the laws of supply and demand in basic economics because demand was there and wages weren't raising. And now we're really seeing it continue to accelerate.
I don't know if Jay Powell is listening to us right now for the program.
He is.
Of course he is.
Yeah.
It's the Friday before Labor Day, so
Yeah.
I know he is on the Bloomberg terminal. We
He
should
may
know.
be headed to the beach, but he's listening.
But he might be one
I don't
person
know.
who's not so happy about what Amy's talking about, because he has said repeatedly over the last few months that the labor market is too hot. And Amy, when you tell me that employees are still in the driver's seat, they still have that leverage, that's not necessarily something that Fed Chair Jay Powell wants to hear. Are you seeing, I guess my question is, are you seeing any signs of softness anywhere?
We're really not. We saw a tiny bit of softness in the technology sector, but we're seeing it more than made up for in other areas.
Wait, slow down. Slowness, you're seeing some slowness in the technology sector. And I feel like that matches with a lot of the stories that we're hearing from companies. So, Amy, give us some more color on that.
So, I think we're seeing, and I wouldn't necessarily call it so much a slowdown, as just a leveling of a market that has just been so white hot that really couldn't continue at that pace. So I think we're seeing more of a balance and equilibrium in that space.
Interesting. Okay. What did you not like in this jobs report? Was there anything in there that gives you pause?
No, I think that all in all, it was really positive, and I think it reflects and mirrors what we're seeing on the ground day to day. I mean, I would love to see the number of women rise back in the workforce. I think that's something that we still as employers need to work on, how we can make it more friendly for the female workers. So I think that's...
we saw some strength in this monthly report we heard from our Reed Pickert for women specifically, but you'd like to see more of that.
That's right. That's right. So although we are seeing a positive uptick, it's still not making a large enough dent in the overarching number.
So I want to ask you, Amy, you're Senior VP of Business Development, North America. So give us an idea of kind of what's top of mind and your priorities, at Adecco as you look at the labor market and what you guys do specifically. What's kind of always top of mind for you right now?
Yes, I think right now it's a few different things. I think it's focusing on the well-being of our employees. And in the past, not only at Adecco, but with our clients, the focus has been highly on the attraction of top talent. And although that's still incredibly important, we're seeing a shift to retention being one of the top points on everybody's agenda. So we're getting ready to head into seasonal planning with a lot of our partners that hire for the holiday season. And instead of looking at recruitment funnels and recruitment and marketing and advertising plans, we're really focusing and looking at how do we retain those workers that they've worked so hard to employ.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
sounds like it's a good time to ask for a raise. Is that right, Amy? Still a good time to ask for a raise?
Or give a raise.
It's absolutely a good time, and we're seeing more than just wages. So wages are important. We're seeing sign-on bonuses. We're seeing retention bonuses. But I think one of the coolest trends we're seeing is what companies are doing in terms of ancillary benefits. So I talked to one of my clients the other day who had implemented on-site clinics so that they could provide access to more affordable and convenient health care for their employees. We're seeing employers add gyms, yoga classes, walking trails, like things to promote financial or physical well-being.
Right. I just want a masseuse every day that I walk in, get my makeup and get a masseuse.
Look, you don't ask for a lot, okay? Just a daily massage.
Everybody who works with me is like, what? She doesn't ask for a lot? Amy Glazer, thank you so much. Senior VP of Business Development North America at Adecco on the phone from Jacksonville, Florida. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, so the most coveted seats here at the U.S. Open, there's only about 24. They cost you $10,000, but there's a catch.
Yeah, but,
What?
even those went really quickly.
They did. We're going to tell you about the catch in just a moment. First up, though, back to the markets and your top business stories. Here is Charlie Callett.
Thank you very much, Carol Massar. Here's what's going on. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all declining. Just a slight bounce off the bottom here, but very close to session lows. Stocks are falling. Major indexes heading for a third weekly decline. Jobs data doing little to alter views on the Fed's next policy move. Also a delay in the opening of a key gas pipeline to Europe. Also weighing on sentiment ahead of a three-day weekend for many, many Americans. So here's where we stand. S&P down 29 right now, drop of 0.7%. Dow Industrials down 211. That is a drop right now of about 0.7%. NASDAQ on the minus side by 121 points, down now by 1%. Employers added 315,000 jobs last month. Reaction to the report from Victoria Fernandez, Chief Market Strategist at Crossmark Global Investments.
The market is pleased with the number. It wasn't too hot of a number. I mean, there was the expectation that we could get a lot more. Look at St. Louis Fed. They were saying maybe north of 500 on the number. So I think the market is relaxing a little bit.
And we've got gold up $17 the ounce, up by 1% now. 10-year yield 3.19%, and the 2-year yield 3.40%. Crude oil higher. West Texas Intermediate now at 86.81 a barrel, up 0.2%, pairing a hefty weekly decline as OPEC ministers and allies prepare to discuss crude output amid a cloudy outlook for a new Iranian nuclear accord. Oil stocks, for the most part, they are higher today. ExxonMobil, case in point, rallying 2%. ADRs of BP up now by 1.8%. Chevron up 1.2%. EOG Resources up 1.8%. And Pioneer Natural up by 0.6%. Again, recapping, equities are lower. S&P right now down by 0.8%. I'm Charlie Callett. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. So, Carol Massar, Tim Stenvik, we are live here at the U.S. Open in Flushing Meadows, just outside Manhattan. It's packed with athletes, their coaches, fans, tourists, and Tim, lots of corporations as sponsors and as spectators.
Yeah, that includes tapping into $10,000 courtside seats and some special new VIP access. Writing about this on the Bloomberg terminal is Bloomberg News senior reporter Jillian Tan. She is joining us this afternoon. Jillian, okay, so let's talk a little bit about what you found in your reporting. Who's ponying up $10,000 per seat? What's different about this year versus other years?
Yeah, so I guess as you can see from the story, like courtside seats are flying, and mostly corporate buyers are the ones who are jumping in, and they're the ones with big entertainment budgets, big deep pockets. And they're ponying up in part because the suites were sold out. And so the USTA came up with an idea of packaging courtside seats with sort of meeting spaces, dining room access, and then player meet and greets, photos with the trophies, things like that.
It's to me like having gone to a concert with an all-access pass, and you get to see the rehearsal, you get to meet the artist, you go behind,
I was
up
just
on
gonna
stage.
say,
that's what it feels like.
It does feel like that. And I just saw some friends here. They
Yeah.
swung by the set and they said, not a bad day at work, right? And I'm like, I agree. This is not a bad day at work, but we're still working.
Correct.
It doesn't seem necessarily like the people who are taking advantage of this stuff, Jillian, are they actually getting any work done, or are they just kind of drinking and eating and watching tennis and, connecting with one another?
You know what? I was talking about this with someone the other day. It's sort of the work before the work, right? It's the relationships, if they're lawyers, if they're bankers, if they're private equity folks. It's solidifying the relationships. A law firm might pay, $100,000 to take 8 clients and 2 of their own partners to this little specific box. They can meet with them beforehand, get them shrimp cocktail delivered to their seat so they don't have to even get up. But then down the road, whoever they're taking might just give them $1 million fee, and already that has returned that so quickly. So is it work? This is the fun part of work, I guess.
Well, Jillian, I'm going to go back to kind of what Tim said. I just assumed all of this was going on already. So what is it that the USTA kind of tapped in to that maybe they hadn't been before? Because I know you talked with Kirsten Coriel like we did yesterday live on air, and she's definitely in the thick of all of this when it comes to these relationships. So what is it that they maybe weren't kind of tapping into before on the corporate side of things?
I think it's more that they're tapping into them by giving them more experiences, right? So anecdotally, I know of someone that hit with Andy Roddick on Arthur Ashe last year. Like, I think that was part of maybe a JP Morgan sort of sponsorship thing, but it's more that they're elevating these experiences for sponsors that have a lot of money to spend with them, but, trying to give them more than like any other fan could possibly obtain.
Can I just say, I also feel like going over the top on the corporate side of things, I feel like that was really toned down post-financial crisis, and I feel like we're seeing it in full swing again.
Yeah, absolutely. The other point that was interesting, obviously, the USTA wasn't able to sort of tell me all the corporates that are snapping up these hot seats, but they did mention some new sectors, like cryptocurrency companies are among those who are spending. So as well as, big spending returning post-GFC, it's also, companies that are prospering that otherwise may not have.
Okay, we just talked about the jobs report and the strength in the U.S. economy. And Carol, you mentioned this a lot yesterday. You look around here and you're saying, there's no recession happening. And look, full disclosure, and to be fair, this is the highest end of the income spectrum that you have shelling out, for tickets, especially at this year's U.S. Open. But Jillian, what does this tell you and what the U.S. Open has when it comes to pricing power in terms of the U.S. economy right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. They have a demand-based dynamic pricing system. So right when they launch tickets, they try and keep them affordable, accessible in the $35 to $50 range. But very quickly, as demand sort of floods in, I guess we're seeing that, middle income America is doing it.
I try to get Jillian back in the last few seconds that we have with her. $140 is what I paid on Ticketmaster today for a resale of a grounds pass today.
What does it normally go for? Do you know?
I have no idea. And it's not like an old school ticket where it would have a price printed out, right? It's the dynamic pricing that Jillian's referring to.
Dynamic pricing.
But I waited until a few hours before this thing started today.
So did it go down?
It went down, yeah.
It did. Hey, Jillian, we just got about 25 seconds. You love tennis. We were hoping you were going to be here. What are you looking forward to, just quickly?
I do. I'm looking forward to seeing Serena tonight. She's taking on an Aussie, Isla Tomljanovic, and also looking forward to seeing another Aussie, Nick Kyrgios, in action.
All right. Are you headed this way later on?
Tonight, tonight. I'll be there.
All right.
Okay, we'll see you here then.
Enjoy. And we really enjoyed your story. Jillian Tan, senior reporter at Bloomberg News, on the phone here in New York City. You are listening to Bloomberg Radio.
Let's get to world and national news with Nancy Lyons in Washington, D.C. Hey there, Nance.
Thanks, Tim. A federal judge has unsealed a list of documents that were seized from former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. The list details a total of 33 boxes in various parts of the property, many from Trump's office and a storage room. Notably, it includes several empty folders with classified banners. In addition to government documents with secret, top secret, and confidential classified markings. Still no ruling, though, from the judge on whether she'll appoint a special master to review the documents. Two different views of America were on display last night during prime time, with President Biden warning of the threat to democracy posed by MAGA Republicans, and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy warning of dangers from the Biden administration.
I will not stand by and watch. I will not the will of the American people be overturned by wild conspiracy theories and baseless evidence-free claims of fraud. I will not stand by and watch elections in this country stolen by people who simply refuse to accept that they lost.
In the past 2 years, Joe Biden has launched an assault on the soul of America.
Both voices could be seen as a preview of the messaging for both parties as we head toward the midterm elections. NASA's Artemis 1 test mission is expected to launch tomorrow from the Kennedy Space Center, following a scrubbed launch earlier in the week due to an engine cooling issue. The 322-foot rocket will take off without a crew for a test flight around the moon. 50 years after NASA's famed Apollo flight, the 2-hour launch window tomorrow begins at 2:17 p.m. Wall Street time. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
All right, Nance, thank you so much. Nancy Lyons in our D.C. newsroom, World and National News. Also coming out of D.C. today, President Joe Biden's top climate change advisor, Gina McCarthy, will leave her post on September 16th. This is according to a source familiar with her plans. This as the president looks to implement a suite of clean energy tax credits and climate programs.
All right. Well, speaking of clean energy and climate programs, we're going to be talking about ESG in a couple of minutes.
We are.
With Katie Greifeld and Joel Weber. I wanted to bring you this story from the Bloomberg terminal about how Morningstar said that its previous assessment of the proportion of Article 8 funds it considers to be sustainable will probably change. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Article 8. This is a designation that comes from Europe, and it's a lot of people look to it because of what's happening in Europe, you know, is more advanced than here in the United States when it comes to ESG. And there are these concerns about greenwashing right now.
Yeah. And Europe is way ahead of us on this.
Way ahead of us.
In terms of transparency. And really, if you're going to have an ESG designation, you know, make sure that there are ESG principles like in the investment strategy, real, you know. But this is part of the problem. ESG, there's a lot of gray area in terms of what it means. What are you looking at?
I just always bring this up. And I mean, if you're listening to us a lot, you know where I'm going to go with this. Elon Musk's comments a few months ago.
He's not wrong.
You know, Tesla's not considered an ESG company by some measures, but by other measures, by that same measure, you know, an oil company would be considered an ESG company. So it doesn't necessarily work for a lot of people.
And that has to do with the reason he doesn't is because of maybe some of the labor concerns in some of his factories, if you will, and also I think his testing, right, with some of his vehicles. What?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
I see Joel Weber walking by the way.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, Joel's going to join us in just a moment. Meantime, Morningstar had originally estimated that 23% of Article 8 funds don't deserve to be treated as sustainable based on its criteria for ESG funds. The figure was accurate when published, according to Morningstar. However, due to a migration process to a new ESG fund framework, which has only just been completed, the estimate is likely to change, and we don't know if it's going to be up or down.
All right, there it is.
The formula changes.
More on ESG in just a few minutes.
When the Coke formula changed? I don't know. All right, this is Bloomberg Radio.
events, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We're looking at a down Friday here, a Jobs Friday ahead of a long holiday weekend. We're on track for a losing week, and right now the S&P 500 index down 27, lower by 0.7%. In the early going, we did have the S&P 500 index advancing by about 1.3%, but right now losses on the screen. We've got the Dow down 196, lower by 0.6%. NASDAQ down 116, a decline of 1%. Major indexes on track for a third weekly decline. Jobs data doing little to alter views about the Fed's next policy move. 10-year yield right now 3.19%. The two-year yield 3.39%. Spot gold up 1%, 17.13 the ounce. Bitcoin down 0.5, 1997 for a Bitcoin. We've got West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.3%, 86.87 a barrel. So again, recapping here, stocks are lower, S&P down by 0.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, the new issue of Bloomberg Business Week, it is out on newsstands on the Bloomberg and at Bloomberg.com/businessweek. In the finance section, you'll find a story about something Tim and I were just talking about. And this is about ESG and its crown. It is slipping, and how it's kind of mostly one group's fault.
Yeah, here with the details on her story is Bloomberg News senior market reporter and the co-anchor of ETF IQ.
She's not really here.
She's not here. She's
Maybe
on the phone.
We'll talk to her.
She's on the phone in New Jersey. Are you working today, Katie?
Come on, Katie.
Are you actually working today?
Just cross the bridge and come to
I'm working extremely hard. It sounds like I'm working harder than you guys. I'm having fun out in Queens.
No, we're working really hard. We had a commute. It was really tough to get here.
Speaking of working really hard, somebody who's joining us on his day off is Joel Weber.
Afternoon off.
Afternoon off. Oh, it's a partial day.
Partial day.
It's a partial.
Well, now that you're here, I don't think you're taking the afternoon
Work
off.
in the morning, then I'll go to the Open.
He's the editor of Bloomberg Business Week. He's with us on site here at the U.S. Open. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice a young man, Henry, is joining us as well. He's 7 years old. He's Joel's son. And, I've heard a lot about him, so it's really nice, Henry, to meet you in person. It's good to have you here. Katie, you were missing so much by not being here. We're going to get to your story right now, though, and talk all about it. It's in the current issue of Bloomberg Business Week. Joel, it starts with Cathie Wood, because something kind of interesting happened with a new Cathie Wood fund. She had to close it up after a few months of operating.
Yeah, and a really memorable comment about lipstick on a pig, which I think, gets into this whole ESG thing, which we wanted to have in the magazine in the finance section. And Katie had the wise idea to talk about ESG funds. And it's really, there's been so much hype in this space, but performance is an issue, especially this year. What's going on, Katie?
So the problem with ESG, and there's several, but to focus specifically on performance, if you think about what makes up the typical ESG portfolio, it's a lot of technology, and it's not a lot of energy stocks, for example. And if you think about what's done well this year, it's energy with technology at the bottom of the pile. So that is already probably a huge problem for ESG, because just 3% of the U.S. listed ESG stock funds have positive returns in 2022, just 3%. If you compare that to the overall universe of stock ETFs, it's 9%. So that huge underperformance, that's probably the biggest problem, because if you think about any asset class, any flavor of investing, flows follow performance.
Okay, so the flows, what's happening on the flow front?
So if you look this year, ESG ETFs have taken in about $4.5 billion, which is not nothing, and it's important to say that. But if you compare that to the last 2 years, in 2021, that number was $36 billion. If you compare that to 2020, it was $32 billion. So again, not nothing, but if you look at the actual chart, flows have just fallen off a cliff. And of course, again, putting this in the broader context of what's happening in markets right now, there's been a massive drawdown, and it just feels like people have shifted to, okay, I need to just hold on to my shirt here versus I'm going to invest along my values.
Katie, I can't help but feel if we were still in, I don't know, technically a bull market, if we were still in a bull market and these funds were still returning, then would we be having this conversation? You and I talked about this when you were, subbing in for Tim. I feel like maybe not. Is it all about performance, and that's why we're all getting kind of a little bit crazy?
So there's a lot of sort of philosophical, existential questions about ESG, but when it comes to performance specifically, I think that's a huge part of the conversation. And I've made this point, I feel like, many times, but if you think about the last 2 years in markets, it feels like you could throw a dart at anywhere in the equity market and you would have made money. And that was really to the benefit of ESG because people got really comfortable. They got used to making money. They started to think a little bit about what I wanted to do. They got used to making money. They started to think a little bit about what I wanted to do with my money beyond just making more money. And that really fueled a boom into ESG in particular. But again, think about where we are now. You have just this long rolling bear market, it feels like, and you have a Federal Reserve that's pretty determined to kill inflation, even if it comes at the cost of economic growth. That all adds up to a pretty bad picture for ESG, especially with that very heavy technology weighting.
But also all of this, Katie, comes against a backdrop of regulators in Europe trying to figure out what exactly ESG is. And investors here in the U.S. as well.
It's a big umbrella.
It is a huge umbrella, and I think that's part of the challenge, and I think some would say that's part of the problem, because it includes a lot of companies that people wouldn't necessarily say are ESG-friendly companies. Take us into that conversation and sort of how that's the backdrop here, Katie.
It is so big and so important when you think about some of the very high-profile greenwashing allegations, for example, against DWS. That definitely sort of took the bloom off the rose a little bit. That happened just in May. And then if you think about, like you said, in Europe, you have regulators taking a closer look, in the U.S. as well. And actually in Europe, you had Morningstar, which is not a regulator, but Morningstar actually stripped the ESG label from almost a quarter of funds that were claiming to promote sustainability. So it feels like investors are maybe taking a bit more of a skeptical look at ESG, just putting ESG on a fund. Well, maybe the last 2 years, that would have been a nice little asset boost or just another sort of advertisement for the fund. It almost feels as if people are being a little bit more discerning now. And I actually spoke to Ben Johnson from Morningstar. He's the head of client solutions over there. He made the point that my ESG, it's not your ESG. It's an inherently subjective, personal sort of thing. And it's really hard to capture that in something as broad-reaching as environmental, social, and governance. That is an absolutely huge label, and it's hard to appeal specifically to people's own nuances.
Okay, so ESG had a moment. Seems like maybe headwinds all of a sudden. Worth mentioning that there are some just straight-up anti-ESG funds that are actually performing well, right? So what do those look like?
So I love this side of the story, but it's important to note that even though with this outperformance and a fund we talk about all the time, the ticker is MAGA. It's the Point Bridge GOP stock tracker. It invests in companies that support.
I think that was trending on Twitter today.
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah, you might be familiar with it. So this ETF, it invests in companies that support the Republican Party. It's down about 3% so far this year, but you compare that to the S&P 500, which is down 16%. That is a huge outperformance, but this fund has just struggled to attract any sort of assets. I believe it's under 20 million overall, even though it has, it's been in the market for several years now. So it feels like on both sides of the ideological spectrum here, ESG and then the MAGA ETF, people aren't really investing along their principles right now at this moment in markets when it's really, again, just about preserving capital.
You know, it's what's interesting there too, Katie, is there's been this hesitance among investors to ever really put their money behind their politics, right? And so we'll see if that changes. And obviously, you know, in places like Florida with Ron DeSantis being very anti-ESG, there's going to be a bigger story here that will evolve over time.
Look what's happened with Disney and Ron DeSantis.
He's
not afraid to get involved.
10 seconds. What are you hoping to do at the Open?
You know, Henry, should we go get one of those big tennis balls that bounces around? Would you like that? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go get one of those.
All right, our thanks to Bloomberg News senior markets reporter Katie Greifeld and Bloomberg Business Week editor Joel Weber, also with us, and Henry Weber, our special correspondent here on Bloomberg.
updates, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this Friday, September 2nd. Stocks are falling. Major indexes on track for a third weekly decline. This after jobs data did little to change views on the Federal Reserve's next policy move. A delay in the opening of a key gas pipeline in Europe also weighing on sentiment ahead of a three-day weekend for many Americans. So here's where we stand. We've got the S&P 500 index down 35 points right now. That is a drop of 0.9%. Dow Industrials down 264 points, down by about 0.8%. Nasdaq lower now by 137 points, down by 1.1%. The 10-year up 16/32, 10-year yield now 3.19%. The 2-year yield 3.39%. Spot gold up 0.9%, 17.13 the ounce, while West Texas Intermediate crude is up 0.4%, 86.98 right now for a barrel of WTI. Got to keep in mind that at one point we did have the S&P up as much as 1.3% after employers added 315,000 jobs last month, slightly above economists' expectations. Administration reaction to the report from U.S. Labor Secretary and former Boston Mayor Marty Walsh.
I take a different approach to this. As a former mayor of the city, I think about how do I grow my city. It's by investing in infrastructure. It's about creating more housing. The housing obviously is a little slow right now in the United States being built, but I think there's different reasons for that. And companies are still looking for people. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago at the White House that people were looking at for 700,000 people working in cybersecurity. We have an ability to hire more nurses. We need more teachers. We have lots of jobs in our country that we need for the future of our country to stay open.
And again, recapping, we do have stocks moving lower now with the S&P down 29, a decline there of 0.7%. Down day on Wall Street, on track for another losing week, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenovic on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, you're listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week live from the U.S. Open. So in the run-up to the U.S. Open, a story came to our attention about how tennis players can be coached from the stands here at the Open. It's a new thing, and in the past, it has caused some tensions between players and their coaches and tournament officials. So we wanted to get into this. So lucky for us, with us right now is Jake Garner, U.S. Open assistant referee. He is here with us on site in Flushing Meadows. Great to have you here with us.
Thank you for having me.
So this is new. Give us some history, because we were reading a bunch of articles about this kind of leading up. And back in 2018, many might remember Serena Williams getting ticked off when chair umpire Carlos Ramos issued a warning for allegedly getting hand signals from her coach that she did. It was against the rules at this time. She was docked a point, later a game. She smashed her racket. I mean, there's a lot that went on. So give us an idea. I mean, first of all, was this happening beforehand, kind of on the sly, or what?
Well, you say it's new here. It's new for the main draw. We've actually tried to trial this in the qualifying and the junior events as far back as 2017.
Okay.
We, as the U.S. Open, really wanted this to become a rule, but we weren't going to go out on our own without the consensus of the tours, the other Grand Slams. So once the ATP came on board this year to have a trial, that's when we opened the doors to be in the main draw.
ATP meaning?
The men's tour.
Okay.
So it's new that it's in the main draw here. Yes, in the past, it was happening. It was happening from some of the coaches off court. It was difficult sometimes for chair umpires to manage, but it's not new that we're trying it here at the U.S. Open to allow this off-court coaching.
You know, it reminds me, so I played tennis growing up in the 1990s in California.
Did your coach from the
Well, you weren't allowed to do that in juniors.
Okay.
Yeah. But then I get to college and I start playing college tennis. Yeah. And in college, you're not only allowed to, you're encouraged to, and you essentially are able to meet with your coach during changeovers. Yeah. I always saw that as, that being part of the collegiate experience, the idea of learning. Is there any history with what happens in college athletics with what's happening now? Because that game is a big surprise to me.
I mean, I'm not sure it's specific to college, but I think, of the people, if you bring up this topic of allowing it or not, you have people on both sides. Tennis is an individual sport. It's up to the people on the court to figure it out. All the coaching should be done before or after. And then you have the people who may come from a college background or at least take that mindset that, the person that's off court is seeing what's going on. They should have the ability to give that information right away and potentially impact the match and allow for something to happen in the different outcome.
And Carol, just to answer your question, it's the overbearing parents in Southern California when you're a junior who are doing the coaching from,
like soccer,
it's
Little League.
It's unbelievable.
No, parents,
Jake knows what I'm talking
parents
about.
getting in the way. Well, Jake, we've talked a lot here at the U.S. Open about the Serena impact, whether it's on the attendance, the prices of things, and so on and so forth. Was there kind of a Serena impact because of what happened in 2018? Because she's so well known in this sport that maybe made it become kind of more accepting, certainly here?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for this specific rule, not really, because like I said, we were trying to trial it earlier than this situation. And then that was back in 2018. We've had a couple of years since then. It was really more about getting everybody on board with how we can approach this rule. And
globally getting everybody on board?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, both tours are now on board. The women's tour and the men's tour are trialing it in a similar fashion. For a while, some on-court coaching was allowed with the women's game. They've changed to this off-court format, so it's really getting it in, like I said, a global impact that everybody's doing it sort of the same way. But, the specific impact of that incident doesn't really, change how we approached it here.
What is so interesting is there have been these incremental changes.
I was going to say, what do you want to ask Tennis Boy?
No, you can tell I'm like champing at the bit here. But there have been these incremental changes that are that I wonder where the motivation comes from. Is it from making it more engaging from a fan perspective? And I think of stuff like, being able to actually challenge a line call or playing a let. I mean, you couldn't play a let at a serve years ago. That was, you would reserve then.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is fan engagement. Some of it's, people thinking what's best for the game, for the players that are currently playing the top of the game. It's sort of like the debate we talked about. Some would agree with the rule and some wouldn't, as why the rule is good. Some will think it's fan engagement. You can see the interaction with the players and the coaches. Sometimes you can hear it on TV. Sometimes, that's a good thing. But I think more than anything, it's just trying to improve the game as much as you can. And if you can allow the players to be at their best, that's best for everyone.
Why not? It happens in a lot of other sports. I think of, whether it's basketball, pick your sport where, the coaches are kind of screaming from the sidelines.
Absolutely.
We just got a couple of minutes left here. What's it like to be a ref at the U.S. Open?
Well, this is the first year that I'm in this role. So I used to be the chief umpire, so still in the officiating realm. But so it's new. It's interesting. I'm a little more involved with the scheduling of the matches.
What's it like to be on the court, though, with the players,
well,
and especially when things get heated?
So that goes back for me, a few years. It was great. I was the chair umpire until about 2018, and it's pretty amazing to be out there for some of these matches.
You must love tennis.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you stay neutral? You must have a favorite player. I'm not going to ask you. We'll not put you on the spot here.
No, it's funny. I don't.
You don't stay neutral, or you don't have a favorite player?
No, I don't have a favorite player.
But is there somebody who's been out on the court and you're just like, man, am I lucky that I am front row seat on this?
For me, the luck has come in the moments more than the players. I'm lucky to have umpired Grand Slam singles finals. But it's the moments, and whether or not it's the players involved or not, it's more the moments, and that's where the luck comes from.
You think they're more nervous, or you're more nervous before the Grand Slam final?
It's probably both. It's different. They come in with a different set of nerves.
But you're the center of attention at some point.
Absolutely.
Just
we try to stay out of it, but sometimes it happens.
It was fun watching Serena and Venus play last night in the doubles, and I think about how technology has made it possible. Like when there's some questionable, that you can go right to a shot right on. That has helped in a big way.
Oh, absolutely. The technology has changed the game completely.
And any kind of controversy about a call or something. Thank you for shedding light on something that is such an important part of what happens here in any tennis match, but certainly at the Open. Jake Garner, U.S. Open assistant referee, with us on site here at the U.S. Open.
And let's go to Washington, D.C. now from Flushing Meadows for a check of the latest world and national news with Nancy Lyons. Hey, Nance.
Thanks, Tim. America's employers added a healthy number of jobs last month, yet they slowed their hiring enough to potentially help the Fed in its fight to reduce raging inflation. Non-farm payrolls increased 315,000 in August. That was well under the 526,000 that were added in July. Jared Bernstein is a member of the Council of Economic Advisors and tells Bloomberg today's report is one of many positive economic signs.
We have 80 days of decline in gas prices, and I think that that's a really important backdrop to everything we've been talking about. We have pretty strong consumer balance sheets. We have obviously got an historically stellar labor market. I think all of those create momentum.
Jared Bernstein spoke earlier with Bloomberg's Joe Matthew on Bloomberg's Balance of Power. President Biden is warning Americans about MAGA Republicans. During last night's primetime speech, he said they were endangering democracy. Bloomberg Government's Jack Fitzpatrick says he noticed something new in President Biden's messaging.
I thought it was very notable that President Biden almost immediately mentioned Donald Trump by name. That's something he had not been doing very much recently, but he made it clear that Trump is the central figure that he is fighting against in what he called the MAGA Republicans and threats of political violence, referring back to January 6th.
Bloomberg's Jack Fitzpatrick. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy gave a prebuttal to Biden's speech and said Biden should apologize for calling MAGA Republicans semi-fascist. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
All right, Nance, thank you so much. Jake Garner, still with us, U.S. Open assistant referee, with us on site here at the U.S. Open. We just didn't want to let him go without kind of asking you. You were, when we went off air, you're like, how did you do this?
I got to tell you, whenever I see, folks like you on TV doing what you're doing, I'm thinking to myself, how do you get to be a professional referee?
Tim's like, how can I do this as my next career?
How did you get into it?
I started officiating at local events when I was in high school. I was 15.
Wow.
I saw a flyer at the local club to attend a training. I joke I got into it for the money. I was a high school kid, and there were college matches, and for me, that $50 a day or whatever was big money.
Hold on, you're a 15-year-old telling a 19-year-old that's like 6'4".
Well, yeah,
that's a shot is
correct.
Out, but they think it's in.
Look, that's how I started, or that's how it meant to start. But at the end, it wasn't really well accepted with the college kids.
Right.
The dynamic didn't work.
Yeah.
So I was then doing junior tournaments. It worked a little bit better with some adult tournaments. We had a low-level pro event that came through town as well that I called lines at, and really, I just fell into it. When I graduated high school, I thought I would do it for a year. I started traveling more. I really thought I'd treat it like a gap year. And, this year is my 26th U.S. Open. So,
do you have we just have about 30 seconds.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite moment? Favorite match?
There's too many to count. Like I said before, sometimes I live for, or what I experience are the moments or the what I remember most is I've been lucky enough to have some family at some of my Grand Slam finals, and so to be able to share that with them, especially my parents and then my wife and kids, to be able to kind of share that with them. It's the same as the players, they put a lot into getting me there. So.
It makes sense considering we just had the editor of Bloomberg Business Week, Joel Weber, and his son Henry was here as well. Like there is something about being able to share all of this with family. Jake, thank you so much. Jake Garner joining us here on site at the U.S. Open. He's U.S. Open assistant referee. This is Bloomberg.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We begin with a developing story, a headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service. The yogurt maker Chobani has filed with the SEC to withdraw its IPO registration. Short and simple statement. According to the filing, the company has determined not to pursue at this time the contemplated initial public offering. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all on the minus side. 43 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. S&P right now is down 31. That is a drop of about 0.8%. The Dow down 236, a decline there also of about 0.8%. NASDAQ down 132, down by 1.1%. Jobs Friday, major indexes on track for a third weekly decline. This morning's data doing little to alter views on the Fed's next policy move. The 10-year yield right now, 3.19%. The 2-year yield, 3.39%. Spot gold up 0.8%, $17.11 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.2%, 86.80 for a barrel of WTI. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. Well, our next guest has gone from professional tennis player to coach to commentator. She's now helping the next generation get there as well. We are delighted to welcome Katrina Adams.
She's former president, chairman, and CEO of the U.S. Tennis Association. She's currently an analyst for many tennis commentating channels, and she co-hosts CBS Sports Network as well. She's executive director of HJTEP, the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program. It's a not-for-profit organization for inner-city kids to learn the game of tennis. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing I'm great. Are you kidding? This is like the coolest thing this
we're
is the
at
coolest
the US
thing I
Open.
can do.
Of course. Pretty amazing.
I gotta say though, how much more relaxed are you now that you're former president, chairman, and CEO of the USTA?
Oh, I'm so relaxed. I mean, I don't have any of the responsibilities
You
anymore,
are like,
so I
you
can
look relaxed. Okay,
I can come. I can dress more casually. I can walk around and meet friends.
Maybe enjoy some tennis. Actually,
sit down and actually watch the tennis and enjoy it. But it's such a treat to be able to come back year after year, and I'm enjoying the tennis this year.
Katrina, we've often broadcast here pre-pandemic and stuff, and one of the conversations we had kind of regularly was about thinking about the next generation of tennis players. Tell us a little bit about your background and maybe how that shapes about how you want to help maybe others today.
Yeah, I mean, I started playing tennis when I was 6 in the city parks of Chicago, Garfield Park on the west side, through a local program, and was able to progress through the sport. I had a coach of that program, thought I had potential, took me on, and I started to navigate the sport, playing locally, sectionally, and then ultimately nationally. And I grew up in a program that was really an NJTL pilot program back in Chicago, Youth Action. And now I run one here in New York. So, it's all about the grassroots. If we have to build a base in order to get some champions to come out in the future, and that's about growing and developing the sport of tennis.
Is that base bigger than it was in the 1980s when you were going through it?
Well, you know what? I think I started in what they called the baby boom back then. Tennis was so popular in the U.S., but I would say the base has become more diverse since when I was playing in the 70s, and that's a testament to players like Venus and Serena Williams, and then, of course, Sloane and Madison and Taylor and now Coco.
Is it actually more accessible, though? Has it become more accessible?
Absolutely. I mean, there are programs in all over the country. When I talk about the NJTL, the National Junior Tennis and Learning Network, there are over 200 chapters nationwide. The USTA Foundation funds many of these programs, whether it's financial or just with human resources and helping them to develop and grow. But there are also so many other community tennis programs around the cities, in the city parks, as well as in some of the clubs as well. And so the kids' interest, when you look at tennis and how it's evolved over the years, and it's a lot more colorful, a lot more excitement in the sport. You look at a Nick Kyrgios, and he's actually drawing players into the sport because they think it's cool, right? And that's what we need. We need personalities.
He's a personality.
He has a personality, but, Serena has a personality too. And, you look at the queen and the greatest of all time and what she has accomplished in her career and the number of athletes that she has attracted to the sport, boys and girls alike. I think it's phenomenal.
I just wish Nick wasn't so shy. No, but
I know we need to work on him being more expressive.
I'd written some notes here because I was reading your background and how you grew up right the west side of Chicago, youngest of three, only girl. And there was a story, I guess it was Sports Illustrated, growing up in the 1980s when gangs were on the rise. That was their words. I hate that I'm going to ask this, how did you do it? Because I feel like, we are a diverse society, but we're still asking that question because many of the industries in our world are not as diverse as they should be and need to be. So, how do we get there? It sounds like programs like you're doing, but how do we even get more diversity in a sport like tennis?
Well, I think we've done a great job, we meaning the USTA, over the years in becoming more accessible through programs like the NJTL chapters. We have adaptive programs as well. We're a huge supporter of the LGBTQ plus community. And so
like last night was great. Like
absolutely. Pride Night was last night with HBCU Live the night before. So when people turn on the television, they can see themselves in our sport and says, wow, they're accepting. I want to try that sport. I want to find out more about it. How do I get more involved? And so we've definitely done a tremendous job over the last 20 years, I would say, in opening up and being more open. Well, be open is a hashtag.
Was it hard when you started?
I won't say it was hard when I started because when I started, I grew up in a community program. I had coaches that loved me. I joined a program in the wintertime. I joined another program. I started playing ATA Nationals. I tell people that I didn't know that tennis wasn't a black sport until 2 years in because the programs in the tournaments I was playing, there were so many black tennis players that were good and competitive. And so until I came into the USTA system in the late 70s.
Was that tougher?
I don't want to say it was tougher. It was just that because I was good enough to start playing or wanted to continue, that it was more challenging because I was the only one that I would see at these tournaments.
Yeah.
But it became a cost-effective matter for a lot of the kids that I started playing tennis with.
Katrina, just 20 seconds left. The state of the U.S. tennis program when the Williams sisters are on their way out.
It's awesome. The USA Player Development Program has done a phenomenal job of being more diverse, as we're talking about that, be more inclusive, making sure that these kids have a pathway to develop, to be the champions that they want to be, and hopefully be a champion right here on Arthur Ashe Stadium.
Oh, man, I wish we had longer. Katrina Adams, thank you so much. Good luck with all your efforts.
Thank you very much.
Let us know how it's going, the program.
We'd
love to keep in touch. Executive Director of HJTEP, the Harlem Junior Tennis and Education Program. But as we said, man, she just does a lot and understands this game from so many different angles. Katrina, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Master, Tim Stenevec, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
You are listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week on this U.S. Open Friday.
It's a nice day.
Don't tell
Can
me.
we come back next week?
I don't even miss the Bloomberg Summer Ice Cream right now because I'm at the U.S.
Well,
Open.
I think it's the last day of the summer ice cream because it's the Friday before Labor Day.
Hey, coming up, we've got a great guest. Something that sings very true to me as I took my daughter back to college and we talked about college food, which is going to be a little bit different this year.
Okay. We'll give it away. I'm not going to give it all away. We're going to be speaking with Janet Lauren in just a few minutes.
First up, though, back to Charlie Pellet. Charlie, 29 minutes to go.
Indeed, I'm enjoying the ice cream, and it's also a jobs Friday today with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. They are very much in the red. We have got 28 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. Right to the numbers, we'll give you the why. Yes, it's all about jobs and the Fed. The S&P down now by 40 points, lower now by 1%. Running the GIP chart on the Bloomberg, we do have stocks declining. We have got the S&P right now close to session lows. The Dow down 319, down 1%. NASDAQ right now down 157, a drop there of 1.3%. 10-year yield 3.19%. The 2-year yield 3.39%. Spot gold up 0.8% right now. An ounce of the precious metal at $17.10. Crude reversal there today up 0.2% right now. 86.79 a barrel after several days of declines. The Biden administration, a headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service, will allow Trump-era tariffs on billions of dollars of Chinese merchandise imports to continue while it reviews the duties. The monthly employment report came out today with employers adding 315,000 jobs last month. Reaction to the report, administration reaction from Cecilia Rouse, chair of the U.S. Council of Economic Advisors.
We saw an increase in the labor force participation rate, especially among women, especially prime-age women. And that did bring along a slight increase in the unemployment rate, but overall a solid report that suggests that we're making the transition that we know we need to make in our labor market to steady, sustainable economic growth.
And one other economic note, the average American home is now selling below its asking price for the first time in nearly 18 months, according to data from online brokerage Redfin. Among some of those home builders, Toll up by 0.2%, KB Home down 0.2%, Lennar right now up 0.3%. Again, recapping, stocks trading lower, S&P down 1.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Carol Master, Tim Stanovic, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week live at the U.S. Open. You can watch us on YouTube. And right now, Tim, yesterday we talked about how inflation has taken a bite out of attending this year's U.S. Open. It's costing you more. That honeydews, it's pretty pricey.
Is college costing more? I'm asking somebody who just dropped her daughter off at college, just out of curiosity. Is college costing more?
As I gulp, yes. What's interesting, though, is one of the conversations that my daughter and I have had as she heads back to school is about, the food, the fine dining halls of academia.
Well, okay, you say that you're laughing, but as I said yesterday, the food at my college was too good.
You were lucky.
Yeah, it was too good. And interestingly enough, Janet Lauren, our higher education finance reporter for Bloomberg News, she's with us on site here at the U.S. Open. She's got a new story out about how dining halls are adapting menus to gird against food inflation. So what's going on at colleges that you spoke to?
Well, you think about when these tuition, room and board prices are announced early in the year, like February and March, and now they're getting everything ready for the new year, and it's up 11%. So they're trying to figure out how they can adjust their budgets since they're not increasing the costs for families. You're going to see, you may not see as many hamburgers, but you may see beef stew with vegetables, so it's not going to be the main star of the menu.
Leftover night.
Sloppy Joes.
Yale is decreasing the amount on their salad bar. And another thing that they've been concerned about for quite a while is food waste. Kids will come back several times and they're not eating it, and then they throw it away, and it's not good for their budgets. It's not good for the environment, and they've been long trying to stem that issue.
I love that. I want to get into that, but I always feel like it's like a separate sweet issue that they're worried about that. Go back to the cost, because part of the problem is, and I thought, I didn't think about this, and you put it in your story, Janet, is that, they set the price, they send it out, they do it, and then all of a sudden, it's inflation and food's going to cost more. They've got to deal with it and figure out ways to deal with those higher prices of costs, and some of it has to do with what? Like reducing variety and so on.
Reducing variety.
Or offering stew.
Reducing portions, too, again, because of food waste. And something else that they've been moving towards that students seem to really want is more plant-based options. Sodexo, which
but that's not always cheap, is it?
Well, if you're not talking about Impossible Burgers, they're doing the stuff from scratch. You know, maybe they're offering more lentils, more tofu, because students are interested in that.
Well, that's what's so interesting. It's like they're kind of tapping into something that is already happening right now, and this idea of moving more toward plant-based. But at the same time, it's better for the environment,
right?
And it's less expensive.
It's less expensive. And Sodexo, which does 500 campuses across the U.S., gave out menus last month with a plant-based alternative.
They did mine, by the way,
for
Carol.
Monday.
Did they? I remember. Yeah, I mean, I was like, I'm 38, so yeah.
What I find interesting is the tofu thing. There was tons of tofu in my college cafeteria.
Probably wasn't like it is
sign
today.
of the times.
It was kind of, it wasn't, right? It wasn't sweet. I didn't love it.
Was it the special vegan dining hall or something?
No.
You guys didn't have that.
No, I know. It was just kind of slid in. So that's kind of interesting. Are they going to ultimately, though, Jen, I think about this. So does this mean next semester or next year, they're going to probably, if we still see these inflationary pressures, it's going to be more expensive again? Or will they continue to do this?
Well, they're still
strategy?
Kind of constrained. I mean, if you were offered a 10% increase in college tuition, that would be a little bit untenable, especially with, we're talking about some of this. Yale is the second richest private college in America. So there's only so much that they can increase. And,
right.
You know, maybe they're spending more from their $42 billion endowment. But we know endowment returns are going to be down this year, as we've talked about anyway.
Well, the year's not over.
Well, their fiscal year is over.
Okay, all right. Okay,
but
fair.
it's you know, it's not an easy time in higher ed.
What?
Hey, before we let Janet go, it's kind of a bittersweet day because it's your last official. Well, you're like not even officially still. You know, we're not supposed to be making you work, but you have some really exciting news to share. Starting now, you are back at Columbia University, your alma mater. You're a Spencer Fellow for the next academic year. Tell us what that entails.
So it's a program designed to allow reporters who write about education to dig into a deep subject. And I've been writing about historically black colleges on and off for the last couple of years. And this is a chance to dig into a certain subset of public HBCUs in the South and look at their finances. And we'll see what comes out of that.
Oh, my gosh, which is such an important topic right now. You know, we were just talking with Katrina Adams about diversity in tennis, and she's working with kids in the Harlem area and more, and just really trying to create some more diversity among a younger generation into the sport. But it sounds like, you know, when we look at academia, the importance of those institutions, right, and giving them the opportunities that everybody else has.
And it's following the money or the lack of money for a long time.
Yeah.
But you'll be back in
I'll be back
June.
next in a year.
Okay.
So next Open,
yes, I'll be back here.
She'll be back here. She'll be back at Bloomberg. I mean, she's not leaving Bloomberg. She's just taking a break at Columbia. Well, we look forward to the fruits of your efforts. Good luck.
Great. Thank you. It's been a great almost 15 years here.
I know. You're not going anywhere, though.
No, I'll be back.
Janet Lauren, she is higher education finance reporter at Bloomberg News. Her stories have always been among the most read on the Bloomberg.
Let's get to world and national news with Nancy Lyons in Washington, D.C. Hey there, Nancy.
Thanks, Tim. U.S. employers last month added a healthy number of jobs, and the steady stream of people entering the job market pushed the unemployment rate higher. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh tells Bloomberg he is encouraged by the numbers.
315,000 jobs add the economy, and the labor participation force number going up as well. So that's a good way to enter the Labor Day weekend.
As for inflation, Walsh says he thinks the newly passed Inflation Reduction Act will help, along with lower gas prices. President Biden is stepping up his attacks on Donald Trump and Republicans who back him. During last night's primetime speech, Biden said MAGA Republicans threaten the very foundation of our republic. The response from Republicans, like from Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, has been to criticize Biden on inflation.
I was stunned at how divisive this speech was last night. And at a time where people across America, and I know in Virginia, are worried about some of the most basic issues, rising inflation and trying to make ends meet.
Governor Youngkin speaking on Bloomberg's balance of power. FBI agents who searched former President Trump's Florida home found empty folders marked with classified banners and it's unclear what happened to the contents. In the detailed inventory of the seized material that was released today by the Justice Department, it lists the contents of 33 boxes and indicates many classified documents were commingled with newspaper, magazines, and even clothes. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
All right, Nance, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Masser, along with Tim Stanovic. We're live at the U.S. Open right now. And what?
Well, among the most read on the Bloomberg terminal is a story about...
Do you like when I do that? What?
Yeah, you like... Well, this is why I like working in person with you and not remotely. Because it's like so much different, right? I mean, we don't usually work away from one another unless one of us has COVID or something.
Which has been a lot
Which has been a lot this summer. But yeah, it's good to be back in person with you. She gives me this look. That voice that you hear is David Dietz. He's coming up next. He's already getting involved. He's excited. He swung by the set a little earlier.
Well, we'll have to see what he has to say about. There's a couple stories on the Bloomberg we just want to bring to you, and one of them is insiders dumping shares at the highest rate in 6 months. The S&P 500's worst August in 7 years, greeted with little interest to buy the dip among executives in charge of the companies. We like to track insider buying and selling, maybe as an indication of what's to come in terms of the market.
Yeah, Corporate Insiders, a group whose buying corresponded with the stock market through March of 2020, the stock market trough in March of 2020, dumped their own shares aggressively in August. Some 2,100 executives hitting the sell button, the most since November 2021. That's on a net basis.
And as our reporting likes to remind everybody, that this data should be taken with a grain of salt, since non-market related factors could be behind the executive's desire to buy or sell. Having said that, we got another seller.
Yeah, Warren Buffett.
Well known.
It's trimming its stake in BYD even further. We talked about this earlier in the week, so you might recall. But it's actually offloading another 1.72 million shares as of September 1st. That's according to an exchange filing Friday, just days after the legendary U.S. investor began reducing his holding in China's biggest maker of electric vehicles. You might remember BYD was the cover story of Bloomberg Business Week just a couple of weeks ago, sort of taking on this Tesla with this un-Tesla approach.
All right, so this is where numbers, I mean, come on, a little perspective. Berkshire's interest in BYD's Hong Kong listed shares now fallen to 18.87% from 19.02%.
I know. We talked about this earlier this week, Carol, when it was an even smaller trim.
It's just...
But look, people want to know what Warren Buffett's doing.
Yes, exactly. And so this is what's going on. Anyway, we do have David Dietz coming up. We're going to talk about the markets. An interesting day, that's for sure. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Masser along with Tim Stanovic.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Worst level of the day right now for the S&P 500 index. Ahead of a long holiday weekend, we've got 13 minutes to go before the closing bell. On track for another losing week, 3 in a row on the S&P. Major indexes are declining after jobs data did little to alter views on the Fed's next policy move. So here's where we stand with the S&P down 55 right now. Late day fade down 1.4%. We've got the Dow down 435, slumping 1.4%. NASDAQ down 194, down now by 1.6%. S&P, by the way, on the second trading day of September, year to date, lower by 17.9%. 10 years up 15.30 seconds. 10-year yield 3.19%. The 2-year yield now is 3.39%. We have got spot gold up 0.7%, $17.09 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.5%, $87.02 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much for that update, Charlie Pellet. It's 3:48 on Wall Street.
The following is an editorial from Bloomberg Opinion.
This editorial was written by the Bloomberg Editorial Board. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's speech at last week's central banking conference in Wyoming was brief, but financial markets took notice. The S&P 500 fell sharply as investors adjusted their thinking on how tough the Fed is willing to be to rein in inflation. Powell said that restoring price stability is the Fed's overarching focus, which investors saw as a new message. Yet the central bank still has work to do in explaining itself intelligibly, particularly since last week's speech contained hints of a commitment to keeping rates high regardless of circumstances. The fact remains the Fed can do forward guidance, or it can be nimble, but not both. With the economy so hard to read, it should not suggest that there's any set path, high or low, for interest rates. This editorial was written by the Bloomberg Editorial Board. For more Bloomberg opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home? Honey, please, I'll do the driving. Drive on. Excuse me, I want to drive. It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
All right, just about 9.5 minutes left in today's trading session. It is time for the drive to the close. And David Dietz is back with us, Managing Principal, Senior Portfolio Strategist at PPAC Private Wealth Management. Roughly $9.5 billion in assets under management. On site with us at the U.S. Open, which has become a bit of a tradition, a really nice tradition. Welcome back.
Well, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be back. And, of course, everything is different now. It's all about Serena this year. At first, we thought it was going to be her, legacy tour. And now she actually might win it. How exciting can that be?
See, and here I was going to...
What did you think?
No, I'm like, okay, is David going to talk about the tournament first, or is he going to talk about the markets first?
This is David's day off. It's so nice of all the people who are off today to come by and spend time with us.
Are you getting lots of calls there from the office? Like, what the heck's going on here? We had a rally. Everybody was Goldilocks jobs report, and now the market's going to look like it's going to close off its worst levels.
Absolutely. I'm at the U.S. Open. The market is up after that Goldilocks jobs report, and all of a sudden things start to tail off. And now, instead of watching Andy Murray, I'm thinking, what is the catalyst? What's going on here? A couple things I would say. One is there is this belief out there that you don't want to be in the market ahead of the 3-day weekend. And I'm thinking, my investors, I train them to do 1, 3, 5 years.
Creedy said this to us, Carol, earlier.
I know, but it's 3 days.
Exactly. The only longest the market's ever closed.
What is going to really change unless, I don't know.
The only thing I can think of is those poor United Nations monitors are there at that nuclear power plant in Ukraine.
And that's rough.
Tensions are up with China, of course, after the United States government is limiting exports by NVIDIA and other chip companies in terms of AI. So there are geopolitical tensions.
That's so interesting that you talk about the geopolitical tensions more so than the strength of the U.S. economy or Or perhaps, you know, what the Fed has to do in response to the strength of the U.S. economy, given what we heard from the Labor Department earlier.
Well, I think the latter is so key because I thought we did get a great report here where we're still creating more than 200,000 jobs. It had a 3 handle. And of course, what's nice is that wages were a little bit more muted because more people are coming into the labor force. That's what we want. We want a little more supply side so that Powell and company don't have to work just on the demand side. But the fact of the matter is 3/4 hike later on this month is still on the table. Yeah. That's not off. Now, the chances diminish a little bit. We're going to know a lot more, Carol and Tim, September 13th when we get that final CPI figure going into that meeting.
What did I say? It's like a kid jumping across stones in a brook. This is what the Fed is doing from report to report. We got one down
Jobs
today,
to CPI.
and the next one is like the next inflation print.
The only other catalyst I saw today was that durable goods order from July. Everyone expected up 10 basis points. It was down 1%. First down month in a string of up months. Yeah. So that reminds people, okay, the economy is cooling, and right now our last messages from the Federal Reserve officials is we're hiking, and we're hiking hard. And that might not work out so well.
Well, okay. I know you shared with our producer, Paul Brennan, a couple of names that you like. So are you more buying for your clients, more selling, or more sitting pat?
Well, we're sitting pat with our asset allocations, and quite frankly,
do they change that much?
You know, we tell people don't change your asset allocation based on the headlines or what you hear on Bloomberg. Unfortunately, change them if something personal to your family and your goals have changed,
or as you get older.
Yeah, something internal to you. Yeah.
So if somebody's got some new money to commit and their situation's good, would you say, you know what, let's just wait. Let's leave it in some cash, something very liquid right now. I don't really want to put it to work. Would you put it to work?
You know, I kind of like putting it to work here from a client, safety perspective, maybe a little dollar cost averaging. But here, we're down 18% from the beginning of January. Interest rates are still low. You're not going to get anywhere with the 3.2% on that 10-year. Mm-hmm. And I do think we're closer to the end of Federal Reserve rate hikes than we're at the beginning. They've front-loaded a lot of rate hikes. So I say put your money to work, go against the tide, and we have a couple names that we really like.
All right, let's talk about some of these names. D.R. Horton is one of them.
That's a tricky one because, so here, the macro theme, of course, is we don't have enough roofs in this country, right? Yeah. And so the people, the younger generations want to get out and have their own house and so forth. Everyone wants new when it comes to construction. So D.R. Horton's one of the market leaders, increased their earnings 22% a year for the last 5 years. They should earn $16 a share this year, but the stock has a $70 handle. So it's cheap, cheap, cheap.
Okay, so you don't really worry about the macro fundamentals too much.
It's good.
Because these names, yeah, exactly. These names move big time on the macro.
But look, we need a lot of, I'm not trying to answer for you, David, but just plain devil's advocate here. We need housing in this country.
Yeah.
Also, I'm buying 40% less than, let's say, last November. So a lot of the bad news is discounted. And if things really get tough, some of the smaller players are going to fall by the wayside where the market leaders will continue.
All right. J.P. Morgan.
J.P. Morgan, one of the few Dow components that's up today. Why? All the bank stocks are down 30 to 40% this year. This was supposed to be their year because of higher interest rates, but that yield curve got inverted. Right. But again, I go to the cream of the crop there, Jamie Dimon, the dean of financial institutions and so forth.
You know, they're building a new headquarters. You know, every time a company...
Their name's all over the stadiums here.
And every time a company builds a new headquarters, it's always like,
Yeah, but I would not want to compete.
Not scientific. I'm just saying I've noticed from years of reporting.
So here's the thing. It's about 10 times earnings. It's just, the price to book, they're priced like an average bank, but they're an above average institution. And I want to capture that differential. If things get tough, stick with J.P. Morgan.
All right,
go ahead. I just had a big picture question.
Go.
You know, I'm reading Eric Balchunas' book from Bloomberg Intelligence. It's called The Bogle Effect. It's about Vanguard and the rise of Jack Bogle. And it's got me thinking, is it gotten harder to compete with the indexes and just, potential clients, instead of putting their money with you, they're putting their money in an S&P 500 index fund?
Are your clients really index kind of people?
Well, look, I love Jack Bogel's quote, every dollar you don't pay on fees is a dollar to your bottom line.
Yeah.
So I'm with him in terms of keeping your investment fees down. On the other hand, we like to be just a little bit more creative than sprinkling our money based on market cap weighting. Because when you think about it, when the market cap goes up and the S&P allocates more to that name, the prices are up. And when it comes back down, that's when you want to be accentuating the ones that come back down.
So creative meaning what? Stock picking, private equity, real estate?
All of the above is
good. You got
good.
high net worth folks.
All of the above is good, but if you're talking people up to $20 million, that stock market looks pretty good because you have instant liquidity, you have small fees.
Still?
Absolutely. Hey, so we're trading at 18 times earnings. That's about a 6.5% earnings yield versus what? And of course, historically, over the next 10 years, those earnings are going to go up 5 to 10%. Dividends are going to follow that. So 10 years from now, even with the market 18 times earnings, I think you're going to do well.
Look, the crowd agrees with you. No, they agree with who's ever playing over there. Just going to put it out there. David Dietz, thank you so much. A pleasure.
A pleasure. Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Enjoy the open. Of course, managing principal and senior portfolio strategist at PPAC Private Wealth Management. This is Bloomberg.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got less than 2 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all in the red. Major indexes on track for a third weekly decline after jobs data did little to alter views on the Fed's next policy move. S&P 500 index had climbed as much as 1.3%. Right now, we have got the S&P down 1.2% after employers added 315,000 jobs last month, slightly above what economists were expecting. David Dietz, a senior portfolio strategist at PPAC Private Wealth Management. He was our guest moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
I thought we did get a great report here where we're still creating more than 200,000 jobs. It had a 3 handle. And of course, what's nice is that wages were a little bit more muted because more people are coming into the labor force. That's what we want. We want a little more supply side so that Powell and company don't have to work just on the demand side.
Indeed, all about those Fed rate hike woes. Rick Reeder is Chief Investment Officer for Global Fixed Income at BlackRock Financial Management.
I still think the Fed's going 75 basis points this meeting, but it gives you a little bit of, we saw, I think claims data was solid this week. The job openings were surprisingly higher. Listen, the labor market's in very solid shape, particularly the service sector. And the fact that today was showing a little bit, it's coming off the boil, it's softening a bit, I think is encouraging.
And right now we've got the 10-year yielding 3.19%, the 2-year yielding 3.39%. There you have it, sound of the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange, and it is on to the weekend. We've got the S&P at the close down 41, drop there of 1%. Spot gold at $17.09 the ounce, up 0.7%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil up by 0.3%, 86.89 a barrel. Lululemon Athletica, after earnings, surging 6.7%. It did raise its full-year outlook, the latest sign that consumer demand among high-income shoppers remains robust, even as inflation hurts purchasing power for most consumers. Broadcom shares today up by 1.7% after the chipmaker gave a strong sales forecast for the current quarter, easing fears that spending on internet infrastructure is slowing. So again, recapping as we begin that 3-day holiday weekend for a lot of people. S&P down 42 at the close, down 1.1%. The Dow down 1.1%, down 337. NASDAQ down 154, a decline of 1.3%. Losing week as well, 3 in a row, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Whoa, yeah, what I say.
Your next move will be your last.
Nobody move a muscle.
Damn, Sippy, you got to move.
And I'm moving from town to town. Time is money. Let's go. Come on, move it. Shake it up. Shake it up.
Bloomberg Business Week. Movers and shakers on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, everybody, it's time for a look at some of the day's movers and shakers. The market overall, the Friday trade coming off of that jobs report, and really the week overall because it's been a rough September start. certainly for the equity market. So let's get to it with Bloomberg News markets reporter Abigail Doolittle. She's back in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Next year, though, Abigail, we promise we're going to get you here because it would be really fun to have you on site with us. The crowd is cheering.
They're obviously not looking at the week-to-date equity market.
Or they're short the market.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the trade today, because it was an unusual one.
It was. And, you know, Carol, the first thing that I thought of is what you talked about yesterday in terms of the unusual reversal we saw at the end of the day, because it was sort of the inverse of yesterday. It was a bullish reversal yesterday. Today it's a bearish reversal, and it was very astute of you to think that that reversal yesterday, where stocks started off lower but then ended higher, had something to do with that payrolls report. So today that Goldilocks payrolls report did come through just right. The participation rate climbing, unemployment going up a little bit, suggesting that maybe inflation's not going to be such a headwind. The Fed won't have to do quite as much, and stocks had been up as much as 1%, and now we're looking at a down close, down more than 1%, the third down week in a row. At the end of the day, and I will mention it is on slightly above volume, I think it's probably just a little bit of nervousness ahead of the long weekend. You know, we've been in this bearish stretch for a couple of weeks now out of that rally, whether it was a bear market rally, I tend to think that it was, or if it was some sort of a real rally. And investors just, you know, taking some longs off ahead of this long weekend and waiting for next week.
Abigail, I've done this to you before. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I do want to give you a shout out because every day we get a great email from you to the entire Bloomberg newsroom that gives me a great idea of what happened in the markets. It's kind of like what I need to know about U.S. equity markets that day. When you join us on the radio, it goes out a little later because, you know, you're with us and not writing that email. But give us a preview of that email. I mean, what's the headline on that today?
It's so funny. I haven't started it. Actually, I have picked out a couple of the charts.
Oh, no.
So the part you're talking about, and thank you
Tim,
so much.
I was going to maybe
I'm sorry.
Tim, maybe I was going to pass ahead of the Labor Day weekend.
Labor Day weekend, nobody's around. Not gonna
No,
write
I was
email.
fully
Sorry, now you have to
planning
do
on
it.
writing it. And thank you so much.
Okay,
I'm so
good.
flattered by both of you. And Paul had actually suggested that maybe, Paul Brennan, your producer, had suggested that maybe I could try to get it out, and it just didn't happen today. But in any case, that part you're talking about in the nutshell, you know, I have to take a look at everything to really know in terms of what will stand out the most in terms of the moving pieces. But ahead of, you know, doing the cross-asset analysis in terms of seeing what did stocks do in the week, well, we know that they're down. Bonds, commodities, the dollar. You know, ahead of that, it's hard for me to say, but I think that probably what stands out the most, and this is not just because I love charts, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100, the last time I looked, still below support of that 50-day moving average. So that strongly suggests that at a minimum, we're going to be testing the June lows, and then it's going to be really interesting to see whether or not those levels hold up. Because if they don't, that would suggest that there's a new low ahead for stocks. And, you know, you just have it going into September, or in September, maybe it will be a September to remember these inflation fears. It seems as though most people think that the Fed is still going to raise by 75 basis points in this meeting. And I think that there's more uncertainty than not. Seasonally, I heard a new stat today. In a presidential year, Septembers tend to decline down 0.9%. I mentioned yesterday in years where you're down into September, they decline 2.5%. So there's lots of signs that this could be a rough month. And today would seem to suggest it. And this week, too, frankly.
Abigail, isn't it crazy? Wasn't it just a few weeks ago that we were talking about, on a technical basis, how there were indicators to show that maybe stocks would continue their move to the upside?
Yes, and that's an interesting point, Carol, and that is the name of a range. So that was when the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, was still below the 200-day moving average. The S&P 500 hit it perfectly, the NASDAQ not quite. And what happens there, if you take a look at this year's trend, it's lower, but it's up and down lower. And what this reminds me a lot of is that bear market between 2000 and 2003. So lots of rallies where folks could get a little bit fooled into thinking that something was, you know, that things were improving. But at the end of the day, you want to take a look at the macro. And I would argue that the macro right now remains a Fed that is taking liquidity out of the economy against a more challenged economy, whether you call it recession or not. And some of the data is still pretty good. I think that, you know, one point to look at, one place to look at is housing. I mean, I think you can make the case that housing is in recession. I was encouraged because at some point I'm thinking about buying something, but for the first time since 2019, the average home price is below the asking price. So that's something else. That's not really
We talked about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, Caroline and I were talking about this earlier. I mean, it's amazing that this is news, right? Because it's been so long and it's been above the average asking price. Hey, Abigail, another technical, even though I know we're focused on macro here.
But wait a minute.
Wait, yeah,
so
go ahead.
do you look at
what am I doing wrong, Carol?
No, you're never doing anything wrong. But Abigail, like in terms of housing, like do you look at it as a technical basis too, or is it more the macro fundamental story?
So I could look at it on a technical basis. That's a great question because I love to chart anything. And the last time I looked at one of those charts, they're kind of scary because they're parabolic and they look probably even worse in some ways than 2008. But in this standpoint, I'm just thinking about it more from a fundamental standpoint because the economy, the job situation, thankfully, seems pretty decent right now. If you think back to 2006, 2007, housing started to roll over mid-2006. Former Fed Chair Janet Yellen and current Treasury Secretary, she was the only member of that Fed at that time to flag in 2006 that housing was an issue. And then we all know what happened from there. But things were pretty good up until 2007, mid-2008. So the fact that we still have jobs okay, the fact that ISM is hanging in there, the PMIs, though, aren't. Those U.S. PMIs deeply in contraction territory. I would just suggest that if the key asset class, one of the biggest asset classes, most of their wealth is in their home, if that's starting to go into recessionary territory, it's hard to see the rest of the economy not following. And I think that's just a tough backdrop for stocks.
Agreed.
But is houses selling below asking price for the first time in years and barely below asking price? Do we need to be calling the housing market recessionary yet, especially at a time when we were just talking about with David Dietz, when in the context of D.R. Horton and other home builders, we need roofs in America.
Yes. Well, the recessionary statistic that I'm thinking of, and bear with me right now, because I think it was the Case-Shiller, the S&P Case-Shiller pricing index. I think that it's down basically 25%. It's fallen every month this year, and it's down, I think, 25%. So that's more of what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
And this is just sort of a little bit of, again, I was sort of happy to see it because I keep thinking there's going to be a nice opportunity in a few months or next spring, especially if rates do go higher. But even if they don't, these swings in perception can just be so dramatic. But I think that this number today, it's just a little bit of confirmation of that. We've been hearing about these crazy bidding wars. I know some of our colleagues have been really beneficial in terms of selling their houses. That doesn't sound like that's the case anymore.
I know a few have sold because they're like, man, why not at this point? Abigail, we love you. Bloomberg News markets reporter Abigail Doolittle. Have a great holiday weekend.
Let's get to world and national news with Nancy Lyons in Washington, D.C. Hey, Nance.
Thanks, Tim. We are learning more about the documents seized from former President Trump's Florida home. Bloomberg's Amy Morris with the latest.
FBI agents who searched Mar-a-Lago last month found 48 empty folders marked as classified, which raises the question of whether the government has all the documents or if any are still missing. The more detailed inventory of the seized material was just released today and shows the extent to which newspapers, magazines, and other items were mixed in with these documents that investigators say were marked as classified, including at the top secret level. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
Two of former President Trump's top White House lawyers, Pat Cipollone and Deputy Pat Philbin, have been appearing today before a grand jury that was impaneled to address January 6th. Jeff Robbins is a former federal prosecutor.
It looks as though they're going right for the heart of the communications between their office, the counsel's office, and the former president.
Robbins says there is not any privilege that exists between the lawyers and the former president. Student test scores in math and reading are plummeting since the coronavirus pandemic. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona addressed the numbers today.
This should be a call to action for educators. We have more money in education. We should maintain the same level of urgency we had at the height of the pandemic to give our students what they need, to not only catch up to March 2020, but really exceed it.
Cardona says students deserve the best. Reading scores saw the most significant drop since 1990, while math scores fell for the first time ever. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
All right, Nancy Lyons, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Nancy Lyons with World and National News out there in our 99.1 newsroom in Washington, D.C. Overall market was down. Starbucks, we wanted to talk a little bit about it because we've been focusing on the open and we haven't had a chance to get into it. Stock was up about 0.4% at one point at its highs, but finished the day down 3%, but we had some news after the close yesterday.
Yeah, we did. Incoming CEO Howard Schultz is out, not for a while. He was interim CEO, third time he's been back at the helm of the company. And we got a new CEO coming, courtesy of the Reckitt Benckiser Group. Laxman Narasimhan is going to head the world's biggest coffee chain, despite never having run a retail or restaurant business, and was a newcomer when he took the helm at the British consumer goods company Reckitt 3 years ago.
Yeah, the first external CEO appointment in the Lysol and Nurofen makers' history, and with no background in consumer healthcare, he joined a company reeling from a turbulent decade where it had swung from one scandal and crisis to another and failed to meet financial targets. We're talking about Reckitt Benckiser Group. Narasimhan, 55, was not afraid to make changes quickly. And so it talked about within the first 3 months of officially starting that job, he had replaced the CFO, dispensed with the services of the Hygiene Home Division president, who had worked at Reckitt, for 32 years. He hired a top executive from his former employer, PepsiCo, to fill a new role of Chief Transformation Officer. And as he gets ready to leave, the entire executive management team at Reckitt is different to the one he started with in 2019. So read this, Starbucks. There's probably some employee executive changes coming.
Yeah, well, look, that's kind of a perfect segue to what I'm going to talk about, Carol. Analysts and investors and other people who know him don't expect him to shy away from large strategic moves at Starbucks. He is going to be working closely with longtime chief Howard Schultz, who's upended the coffee chain's management and strategy since coming back to the helm for a third stint. Labor is a huge issue for the company as more and more stores around the country are looking to unionize.
Yeah, this is a great read-through of just who this guy is, what he did before, to give you an idea of maybe what's to come from Starbucks. But, a lot of companies going through changes as we get out of the pandemic. All right, you are listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week. This is Bloomberg.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Jobs Friday, stocks had their third weekly loss, all about rate hike woes. S&P 500 index today down 42 points, a drop of 1.1%. This morning's job data doing little to alter views about the Federal Reserve's next policy move. The Dow today was down 337, a drop there of 1.1%. NASDAQ down 154 for the NASDAQ Composite Index, a drop of 1.3%. 10-year yield 3.18%, the 2-year yield 3.39%. Spot gold today up $12 the ounce to $17.09, up 0.7%. Bitcoin down 0.8%, 19,920 on Bitcoin. And West Texas Intermediate crude today up 0.5%, 87.03 for a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude. Briefly, Chobani, the food company perhaps best known for its Greek yogurt, has withdrawn its document for a planned IPO. This according to a filing with the SEC. Recapping, a move lower, losing week as well. For the week, the S&P 500 index was down 3.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, for just under $2,000...
That's it?
You too can be more like Serena Williams. Well, at least on one level.
Here to explain is Bloomberg News reporter Janet Wu. She joins us on the phone from Nantucket this afternoon. Janet, how are you?
Hi, actually, I'm on the Cape. We didn't make it over to Nantucket because we couldn't get a slip over there. So we're on the Cape and may go over there tomorrow. But I am watching, I am dialing in from the beautiful water right now. So you are so right. Carol, if only we could get her tennis skills as well as that bag for $2,000. Yes. Fans are noticing that she's been carrying this distinctive bright orange bag from a nearly unknown designer in New England. Kimberly Pucci just opened her first store in Newport in her native Rhode Island. Until now, she's been selling online and designing custom bags for private jets and yachts. Last week, Kimberly was at the 1640 Society Gathering in the Hamptons, the invite-only event for family offices. Serena was there for Serena Ventures. We know she loves investing right now, and Serena spotted and fell in love with the bag. I asked Kimberly about the moment she learned millions of people were watching Serena carry her creation.
She decided to wear it last Wednesday at the U.S. Open practice sessions. Within 5 minutes, received 20 text messages. Is Serena wearing your bag at the U.S. Open? That's how I found out.
What were you looking to create when you designed this bag that Serena fell in love with?
A bag that women and men could wear across the world. Tuscan leather, super soft. You can put sports gear in it, put your kids' toys in it. Serena is carrying my signature color, which is called arancia, orange in Italian, and it has a very unique stripe, metallic navy and white. The stripe is my signature stripe, very much representational of my New England roots, and then the craftsmanship of the bag, of course, reflects my years working and living in Tuscany. It's a culmination of American meets Italy.
And as you probably know, Serena has a love for Italy because she met her husband, Alexis Ohanian, in Rome. We've posted a story on the terminal and on Bloomberg.com with pictures of the bag. Carol and Tim, yes, it does sell for $1,950, and sadly, it does not come with the serving skills.
No, it does not at all. I got to say, I just retweeted your tweet out about the bag, and I got to say, it is always either about the bag and the shoe or the shoes.
You saw Serena yesterday.
I did.
Did she have the bag with her? She
Well,
just
she
had her
was,
tennis
she was
bag,
out on the
right?
court,
Yeah.
so I think she had to put the bag away. She probably
I saw her yesterday too. I didn't notice the bag.
But I got to say, I love the picture that you shared out on Twitter. It's pretty gorgeous. I love the story behind this, and this is like, so designers always talk about, especially upstarts, about trying to get their product into a celebrity because it can be game changing. I remember Uggs. And I'm trying to think, it was Kate Hudson, wearing them, and all of a sudden, and they took off again.
Wait, this time they took off again? Or they took off when I was
the second time around.
Okay, so not 20
they
years
might have
ago.
had their moment.
I finally got
40 years ago. Okay.
Uggs might have had their moment. Yeah, this was We always try to connect the dots, right here. Yeah. So we always try to connect the dots here. The two women met in the Hamptons at this small gathering, and she happened to mention to Kimberly Pucci she really loves large unstructured bags because tennis gear is not small. You got to throw a lot of things in there. Plus, she has her kids' stuff. Now, my sister was at the U.S. Open, passed by Serena Williams in the hallway because they were staying in the same hotel, snapped the picture. I posted in an Instagram story at Janet Wu News, and somehow people knew that it was the bag. They told Kimberly Pucci, who then reached out to me, and I saw that she was in Newport, Rhode Island, so then I reached out to her. and I said,
so it's because of your sister that we're talking about
Yes,
this?
my sister passed by Serena Williams in the hallway and snapped the picture, and she basically got a great picture of the bag. And then I saw the bag. Serena is basically wearing this bag every day. We've had one woo was enough. One woo was enough.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. No, but it's really cool. This designer. So is she getting swamped with orders?
Yes, she did. And the first thing I told her is, when I said to her, you need to call me back, is I said, how much do you have in stock? Because she does a very small run. She used to live in Italy. This is a beautiful story. She went there for at the end of college and was going to start law school, fell in love with Florence and also fell in love with a man in Florence, stayed for 22 years, started designing for jewelry designers and leather craftsmen in Italy, and then came back to the U.S. finally when she was raising her family. But her connections to Florence are strong, and she started working with craftsmen to design these bespoke bags. I mean, it's not a huge store. She didn't sell in stores at all, just online and for, as I mentioned, the private jets and yachts. If you happen to know the right people, Carol, you can get a gift bag from Kimberly Pucci if you get on the right yacht, apparently.
You just gotta run into the right people in hotels too.
$20 or whatever it is, I'm going to get a honeydew and a free glass.
22.
Plastic, probably.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, Janet.
That's what your souvenir is from the U.S. Open. And some great tennis.
No. I'm just having fun with you. It's a great story, and I love something like this, and what a kick for the designer, like that she, like overnight being known. Janet, some great reporting. I do think you owe your sister something. I'm just going to put that out there.
I always do. She's my older sister. She's the alpha of the family. We pay her lots of respect. And she had a great time at the U.S. Open. I'm sorry she couldn't meet you.
I wish she had come by.
Next year.
Yes. Tell her to stop by. Janet Wu, fun to check in with you and hear your story. Janet Wu, reporter at Bloomberg News, on the phone from the Cape. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Master along with Tim Stenovic. I wish we had that in like a swag bag.
All right, keep wishing.
I will. This is Bloomberg.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
It's Bloomberg Business Week. Tim Stenevec and Carol Massar, and we're live from the U.S. Open in Flushing Meadows, Queens. Hey, right behind me, you might see someone familiar. Sir Andy Murray is sitting down for an interview right now. You can probably see that if you're watching YouTube. Carol, that's one of the really cool things about being here at the U.S. Open, right? I mean, we have the world's best tennis players. I just walked by him.
I know. You just walk around, and he's sitting down to do an interview, and maybe we'll see if we can pull him in, maybe to join us with John Wertheim.
He did just lose in 4 sets.
So he's probably sitting and talking with a lot of folks.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, coming up, though, I feel like we saved the best for last. John Wertheim, executive editor for Sports Illustrated. He's going to join us. We're going to spend the last half hour talking with him and talking the U.S. Open. And we'll do that in just a moment.
First up, though, Charlie Pellet, give us an update on what happened on Wall Street today.
It turned out to be a down day with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ. Let me give you the weekly numbers. That's telling the S&P this week down 3.3%. The Dow this week down 3%. NASDAQ this week down by 4.2%. Stocks fell. Major indexes all closing in the red today. This morning's jobs data did little to alter views on the Federal Reserve's next policy move. Annetta Markowska is chief U.S. financial economist at Jefferies.
This was a sort of a sweet spot type report because we're still seeing solid wage growth, probably too hot for comfort in isolation, but I think that's mitigated by that improvement in the participation rate.
But that report only fueled rate hike woes. S&P today down 42 points, a drop there of 1.2%. We had the Dow lower today by 337, down 1.1%. NASDAQ down 154, decline of 1.3%. 10-year yield, 3.19%. The 2-year yield, 3.38%. Spot gold today up by about 0.8%, $17.10 the ounce, while West Texas Intermediate crude was up 0.5%, $87.05 for a barrel of WTI. According to a document seen by Bloomberg, Aurora Innovations CEO recently laid out a range of options for the self-driving company to respond to worsening market conditions and partners pushing out timelines, including a possible sale to Apple or Microsoft. Apple shares today down 1.4%. Microsoft today down 1.7%. So again, recapping the Dow, the S&P and NASDAQ all dropped today. Third weekly decline for the S&P today, down 42, a drop of 1.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. I kidded that we saved the best for last, but I really mean it because John Wertheim, well known to our audience, to the Bloomberg audience, to sports fans overall, he joined us in years past for our coverage here at the U.S. Open. John, of course, executive editor for Sports Illustrated, correspondent for the Tennis Channel and 60 Minutes, author of several books, including Strokes of Genius, which was the historic 2008 match between Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. Also, Venus Envy, Power Games, Teenage Vixens, and $1 Million Egos on the Women's Tennis Tour. He is working for the Tennis Channel for the U.S. Open. Super, super kind to find some time for us. And John joins us on the phone in Los Angeles. John, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? Enjoying a day of tennis, I hope.
It is, I have to say, John, it is incredible. I mean, I know you've covered this. We've done a few years of coverage of this. I have never seen it so busy and packed so early on.
And Serena's playing at night. No, it's really working out nicely. I mean, the weather's cooperating. I would say it's one of the great. Everyone associates it with sort of luxury suites and with the landed gentry of New York, but it's a great value. I mean, you amortize your ticket and you can be there for 12 hours and watch men and women and singles and doubles and practicing, and then obviously Serena's been the story this year, but I would say it's a great sporting experience.
Yep, and over 12 hours, lots of honey deuces. I do want to ask you, though, about the Serena impact. I watched she and Venus play doubles last night. Tell us about the Serena impact and how you see it, and what are your expectations for her?
Well, I mean, my expectations, I think, like everyone's, have completely changed to let's hope this is respectable and she'll get the celebration she deserves. To, I mean, people forget the tournament before the U.S. Open that she played, she lost her last set 6-love. And I mean, honestly, it was difficult to watch. The way she has transformed herself, improved her movement, improved her confidence, and literally in 2 weeks is just astounding. So this went from let's have one nice celebration night to holy cow, she might be able to win this tournament. And I think the pressure on the opposition is only going to grow. I think one thing we've seen is that, you know, there are no home games and road games in tennis. It's really jarring to be the opponent playing in a stadium of 23,000 people, knowing that every single one of them wants you to fail, which is, I think, a huge variable in Serena's favor.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, I think it's almost like a business story. On the one hand, like, there are these short-term games. So ratings are up and the secondary ticket market is exploding and there's been record attendance. I think the real challenge for tennis, the USTA, the US Open, is how do you really get some long-term growth out of this? Instead of thinking and having these celebratory press releases over StubHub prices, take all of this attention, and it's positive and it's glamorous and sexy and it's all the celebrities. How do you alchemize that into more kids playing tennis, more interest for next year, more people playing tennis more often? I mean, I think there's sort of a short-term gain that's obvious, but I think the real challenge, but also the real opportunity, is to take all this Serena magic and really try and apply that to long-term growth.
Well, we just spoke to Katrina Adams, who was the former CEO of the USTA and president as well, and she's confident that the base has grown so much in the years since she was playing in the 1970s as a young child in Chicago. And John, I wonder if you're seeing that as well in terms of the talent pipeline, the 17, 16, 18, and 19-year-olds who are hopefully going to fill some big shoes after the Williams sisters era.
Yeah, I mean, candidly, I think it's very much a tale of two genders. And if you are a young, talented female athlete, I mean, as we are speaking, Coco Gauff is playing tennis. She is 18 years old. She is a tremendous athlete who probably 10 years ago could have had her choice of any sport to pursue. She chose tennis. One reason, and I don't know if it's the case here, but 9 of the 10 highest paid female athletes are tennis players. I mean, there's so much opportunity. It blows the other sports out of the water in terms of women. Not so the men. And I think what we're seeing is that there are a lot of very talented young female players, some of them women of color, some of them not. But I think that, you know, at some level we are all creatures of incentive, and the financial incentives for young female athletes are much different than young male athletes. And it would be great if there were ways to incentivize men as well. I mean, the one thing, you look at this event, Serena's almost 41 years old. Rafael Nadal is 36. Andy Murray, you just talked about, he's 35. So you're not going to make the money that an NBA player would make, but you might play 25 years. So, I think it's very positive on the women's front, not so much on the men.
John, we're going to come back to you in just a moment. We're going to do a little bit of news, but we'll come right back with John Wortham, executive editor, senior writer, Sports Illustrated, correspondent for the Tennis Channel in 60 Minutes, and just a go-to on all things sports, and especially when we talk tennis.
All right, let's get to World and National News with Nancy Lyons. Hey, Nance.
Thanks, Tim. President Biden is applauding the latest monthly jobs report, calling it more good news.
Jobs are up, wages are up, people are back to work, and we're seeing some signs that inflation maybe, I'm not overpromising, may be beginning to ease.
The economy added 315,000 jobs last month. The national unemployment rate, though, ticked up to 3.7%. A federal judge has unsealed a list of documents seized from former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. The list details a total of 33 boxes in various parts of the property, many from Trump's office and a storage room. Notably, it includes several empty folders with classified banners, in addition to government documents with secret, top secret, and confidential classified markings. Still no ruling from the judge on whether she'll appoint a special master to review the documents. William Barr, who served as Attorney General under Trump, is not holding back his thoughts concerning the search for documents at Mar-a-Lago.
People say this was unprecedented. Well, it's also unprecedented for a president to take all this classified information and put him in a country club, okay?
Barr says it's clear the government was deceived many times. NASA's Artemis 1 test mission is expected to launch tomorrow from the Kennedy Space Center, following a scrubbed launch attempt earlier in the week due to an engine cooling issue. The 322-foot rocket will take off without a crew for a test flight around the moon 50 years after NASA's famed Apollo flight. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
All right, Nance, thank you so much. Nancy Lyons in our 99.1 newsroom in Washington, D.C. We're going to get back to John Wertheim, of course, executive editor for Sports Illustrated, correspondent for the Tennis Channel in 60 Minutes. He's also a senior writer at Sports Illustrated. We're going to continue talking about the U.S. Open and more. In the meantime, coming from the U.S. Open, Rafael Nadal.
Yeah,
bloody nose.
Yeah, and look, every tennis player who's been playing for years knows that you can hit yourself with your racket. That happens, and it was no exception to what happened to Rafael Nadal. He cut himself on the bridge of his nose with his own racket. It ricocheted off the court on the follow-through from a shot, leaving him bloodied and dizzy during his second-round victory at the U.S. Open.
Yeah, play delayed for about 5 minutes during a medical timeout in the fourth set of what would become a 2-6, 6-4, 6-2, 6-1 win against who he was playing with. Let me just look.
Yeah, Fabio Fognini.
Yeah, here at Arthur Ashe. And so it began Thursday night. It finished after midnight on Friday, so it was a long match last night.
Were you here for that? Did you watch
No, I didn't. I watched the doubles match with Serena and Venus. What's interesting is I kept watching Venus, and I was thinking about this because there's a couple times where there were just some great volleys going back and forth, but some really, ones where she just ducked like out of the way so that she wasn't hit. And I thought, God, because you're looking at the IBM monitors, that are up there and telling you how fast the balls are going. And you're thinking, man, you don't want to get hit by this stuff.
Oh, no, not even close. Are you going to stay tonight?
I might stay for a little bit.
There's a big match tonight.
I know there's a big match. I know I'm going to go watch Serena practice at 5:30.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that and just being on the access here, because John Wertheim, who we're speaking to, and we're going to be back with him in just a couple of minutes.
Knows about that access.
Well, he was talking about the good value that people find if you amortize this over 12 hours, right? Yesterday on my way out, I managed to stop by the court where Serena and Venus were warming up for their doubles match.
Yep.
The line to just see them do that was incredible. The energy, the excitement of people just to catch a glimpse of the sisters warming up. Really magical.
I caught Venus after you, and then I caught when she walked out, and she stayed there. She met some friends and kept it is. There's so much you can see and do while you're here. We're going to get back to John Wertheim in just a moment right here on Bloomberg Business Week. This is Bloomberg Radio.
sports, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Third weekly loss for the S&P 500 index today. Rate hike woes rattling Wall Street. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all decline. We close close to session lows. S&P today down 42 points, a drop of 1.1%. The Dow was down 337 points, a drop there also of 1.1%. NASDAQ Composite Index down 154, lower today by 1.3%. 10-year yield 3.19%. The 2-year yield 3.39%. Spot gold up 0.9%, 17.11 the ounce, while West Texas Intermediate crude was up 0.5%, 87.05 a barrel on WTI. Bitcoin today down 0.7, 19,923 on Bitcoin. So again, recapping here, weekly loss. S&P this week down 3.3%. Dow Industrials again down 1.1%. S&P today down 1.1%. NASDAQ down 1.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Carol Masser along with Tim Stenovec. We are live at the U.S. Open here on Bloomberg Business Week on radio and on YouTube. John Wertheim, executive editor for Sports Illustrated, correspondent for the Tennis Channel, 60 Minutes, author of many books, senior writer, too, at Sports Illustrated.
I can't believe he has time to even join us when he's doing all this stuff.
We are very honored that John is still with us, joining us on the phone from L.A. Hey, one other thing, John, we wanted to ask you about Serena, and we're thinking about her Vogue article, her column that she wrote in the September issue. And, she talks about that if she had been, maybe I'd be more of a Tom Brady if I had that opportunity. She was basically just talking about the differences between men and women in sports. And, she's thinking about expanding her family. How do you think about that, about women in sports versus men in sports?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's something we probably ought to talk about more. I couldn't tell, to be totally honest. I don't know how much of that was just, and I would love to sort of have a follow-up at some point. I mean, how much of this was just sort of recognizing biology, and Tom Brady doesn't have to go through, Tom Brady doesn't have to worry he has to get his body back together after childbirth. How much of that was about just sort of the misfortunes and sort of the biology differences, and how much of that was a criticism about something more systemic? Does the WTA not have the right maternity leave policy? Was there something sort of institutional that she was complaining about, or was she just kind of acknowledging that there are biological differences between men and women, and that Tom Brady and all these athletes that play into their 40s don't have to worry about what she has to worry about? I'm curious what she meant by that, because I think it's intriguing either way, but I think there's a big difference between, what a bummer. Tom Brady didn't have to put on extra weight and worry about giving birth to another human being versus there's something really wrong with sports and I'm not allowed to play as long as he is. So I'm not sure what she meant by that.
It's a good point, right? Because I think we were thinking, here's somebody who has it all and has a lot of resources to be able to kind of, quote unquote, have it all.
In that piece, and I read it again last night, Carol. I read it a few weeks ago when it came out. I read it again last night. And she doesn't explicitly come out and say, this is my last U.S. Open. This is my last major tournament. John, how did you read into that?
I thought it was very much in keeping with Serena, where there's always been this level of opaque. There are some athletes who it's truth serum, and what you see is what you get. She's always held back a little. There's always been this mystery. At the same time, I mean, it's really hard in these individual sports, right? I mean, in some team sports, look, your contract runs out, or another team will sign you, or you're taking up salary cap space. In tennis, in these individual sports, it's really hard. She just beat the number 2 player in the world. It's very understandable that she says to herself, boy, do I really want to walk away from this? I mean, I will never be as good at anything else as I am as a tennis player. Am I really ready to walk away? So she kind of sort of left the door open. It's a little bit weird, I got to say, after all of this send-off and the tributes and the videos and the ceremonies. It would be a little weird if she were like, hey, everybody, I'll be playing in Auckland in January. But you never know, right. And in some ways it's very consistent with Serena Williams to kind of keep us guessing a little bit.
Yeah, and she's certainly, I mean, the buzz here. I know you're going to be here next week, John. The buzz here is just absolutely incredible. Carol's been coming here for years. I've been here a few times before. I've never seen anything like it. Hey, John, I am actually going to, this is not all about me, but I am going to actually get some time after our program is over today to walk around and see some tennis. You have a great story out in Sports Illustrated about how to have the best time at the U.S. Open. For the hundreds of thousands of attendees this year, what are some tips that you can provide to us about how to have the best time?
Oh, man. What can I tell you on Friday? Go watch the very best junior players you can, because you never know. You may, if you had been here 2 or 3 years ago, you would have seen Coco Gauff and Carlos Alcaraz playing. Go watch any match that is late. If you see a fifth set or a third set on the women's side, regardless of who's playing, it's just great sports drama. It's just so theatrical, and for my selfish purposes, there's such a literary quality watching two individual athletes battle it out. I mean, this is a little off time, but Queens is the underrated tennis player bureau. The same way you have dark horses in the draw. There's so much about Queens. There's a miniature golf course about 100 yards from the tennis. Corona Queens and the Queens, the Flushing Chinatown is terrific. But from a tennis standpoint, keep an eye on the juniors and keep an eye on any, this year especially, if you see any Ukrainian players, maybe in doubles, cheer them on. They could use it.
Is there anything in particular? I mean, those are, I think, amazing tips. And I agree, like, just even walking around, you just never know kind of who you're going to see or watching where they're practicing. It's just kind of the fun ambiance of the U.S. Open. John, is there anything, Serena's obviously a big draw. In terms of other players that you like to keep an eye on, is there anybody else that you're watching really closely?
Yeah, it's funny. Serena's kind of obscured this whole tournament so far. People forget.
Yeah.
Rafael Nadal is the all-time major winner among the men, and he has not lost at a major this year. I mean, he's going for his third major. At age 36, which is a mere pup compared to Serena Williams, but in conventional athlete years is still getting up there. The two top seeds, Daniil Medvedev is a wonderful player. He won last year. And Iga Swiatek, who hasn't really punched through in the U.S. yet. But she's a terrific player. She won 37 matches earlier this year. I'm glad you mentioned the, and I should have said this. You know this, Carol, but the practice courts are another great value that not all fans know about. I've always said it's like, imagine going to a Broadway show and before the actual performance getting to sit on the rehearsal for no extra price or the band's sound check. So the practice courts, you not only get to see the players up close, but you can learn a lot about how they go about their job, their level of professionalism, their constitution. If you're a casual fan or a tennis diehard, there's a lot to be gleaned by spending some time as a practice coach. But you know that already. You're very savvy.
Yeah. Aw, aren't you sweet? It's like that all access pass, right? But it's that stuff while they're rehearsing.
Very cool.
That's the fun thing. Gosh, John, we could talk for you ever. I know we only got a few seconds left. What, Tim?
I want to know picks. What to watch into the finals, John. Who should we be keeping an eye on? You mentioned some names, but thinking as we get to the second week.
Just got about 30 seconds too, John.
All right, I'm going, age is our big theme so far in a 40-year-old woman. I'm going with two teenagers, though. I'm going Coco Gauff, who is winning as we speak, and Carlos Alcaraz. I think we have two first-time winners, and I think they are both under age 20.
Oh, my gosh. Great stuff. John, thank you. We know you are busy. You wear so many hats, and we love that you always find time for us, and we really, really appreciate it. John Wertheim, check out his coverage of the U.S. Open. Check him out on Sports Illustrated. Check him out on 60 Minutes and the Tennis Channel. He did a great piece on Rafa for 60 Minutes. I loved it. That's it.
That's not it. We're going to go watch some tennis. We're going to drink some honeydews.
It's honeydews time.
Yeah.
It's also Serena time because she's going to play her match tonight. All right, guys, have a safe holiday weekend. For Tim Stanovic and the Business Week team, have a good night. This is Bloomberg.